Welcome back. Call it a silver surge because it's the baby boomers economy. We are just living in it. Americans 70 and older now hold a massive share of U.S. wealth, commanding nearly 40% of all stocks and mutual funds and about a third of total household wealth. But such concentrated wealth for one generation could have economic risks. This is from the Wall Street Journal. There has never been a better time in America to be old, yet it also exposes our disjointed national priorities. We keep pouring resources into making the elderly comfortable and happy when the economy's pressure points lie elsewhere. That's an interesting take on it. We do always focus on retirees and the elderly, but to be fair, Charles, I would say I'm sure if you break that down within the boomer population, there is a disparity there. There are haves and have-nots, as there are in other parts of the age sort of categories. But if you're a boomer and you invested in the stock market and you put money away and you bought a house or maybe a couple of houses, a vacation house too, I mean, you're sitting on a ton of wealth, and some of these kids are saying you're locking that up and I can't get my hands on it.
We have a record amount of seniors who live alone, for instance, and we keep talking about a housing shortage, and so that's an area where people, of course, the memes are endless. I'm glad the Wall Street Journal finally covered this because I've been talking about it for over a year. This is a serious social economic issue. It's not just economic, but you look at the memes, right? And they'll show old folks dancing, like, oh, look at them, they're partying because they bought their house, that's worth $5 million for a bag of apples, right? Those dances. Yeah, so it is tough. It really is tough, and it also has implications, for instance, with Fed policy, right? Think about if you have the top 20% doing like 60% of the purchases, and within that are mostly older folks who have these assets. For instance, dining. Every category is dining less, but overall, our dining numbers are through the roof because they're going to dinners, right? How does the Fed react to that? Do you punish young people with higher interest rates because the economy is too hot? The economy is not too hot. Old folks are spending money, but it's not too hot. So why would you stop a young person from the ability to start a business? Why would you hurt a small business with the ability to raise money? Maybe, there's a big difference raising money at 16% than 23%.
Sure.
So there's a lot of implications for this.
But I'm wondering, and I'm going to jump off of something you just said, which is if the old folks have all this money, or at least a certain portion of them, David, sometimes they're generous with generationally with their family members.
I can speak to that.
We have spoken about, kids living at home longer, taking advantage of that aspect because it is so expensive to go rent something or buy something. So they stay home and they're benefiting from, food in the fridge and a car to use and all of these different things. Some of us, even at this table, are still on our parents' cell phone plan.
Hey.
But having said that, they're generous.
Family discount.
And that helps sort of trickle down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I don't. My kids aren't living at home, but they're having problems. I mean, Charles and I can speak to this. I mean, I have kids who are making a really decent, what I would consider to be a better than decent salary than I was making when I could afford a starter home.
Yeah.
I mean, I went in debt, I went in hock, I had to borrow some money from my own folks to do it, but I did it. It was back in the 80s, and I did it on a salary that even inflation adjusted was less than what my kids, and they can't afford one now. Part of it is the price of the house, part of it is the interest rate, et cetera. I think what the president could do next week with the State of the Union is speak directly to this, saying, look, as good as the economy is right now, I know a lot of you people are having, particularly young folks, are having trouble getting started. You can't get it. You don't feel like you can get a foot up because you can't save money. You certainly don't have enough money to buy a house. I'm going to do everything I can to turn that around. One of the things, it was Anthony Chan, who's the former head economist from J.P. Morgan Chase, who said maybe what the president could do is make an effort, say, I'm going to cut all tariffs on everything that goes into making a home, starting with lumber. Let's just start with lumber.
Although lumber prices, have you looked at them lately?
Yeah, I know.
They're down tremendously.
Going in the right way, but everything that could possibly make it more difficult to increase the supply of housing, I'm going to try to fix.
I just want to pick up on one thing, too. The other part, though, it's one thing to help people, right? But we want them to family formation, get out there and get on their own. And one thing that's really problematic is when people think they're only going to rent forever, they don't save money. Right? In other words, it's a different mindset. And I think that's something that we had to our advantage, that you knew that if you saved a certain amount of money, you would eventually be able to buy a house.
Yeah.
When people give up, the data is awful. you spend everything every week.
That's a really good point. Taylor, I want to come to you since you like stats, and I really think that this is great. The federal spending on elderly programs as a share of GDP, this is according to the CBO, is projected in 2036 to be 11.3%. But that's up from the 90s. It was 1991, it was only 5.8%. So if they have more money than they did then, why is the spending going up?
Well,
like
you
this?
know that answer. We can't stop ourselves.
Right.
The spending. Now, I guess you could argue because there's older generation in the economy, so as a percent of GDP it would go up because older people, as a percent of GDP, there's more of them than there are us because the birth rate has fallen. So in some ways, I guess that makes sense. But the answer is, we've got to cut the spending, especially if, here's a good stat for you. The S&P 500 in 1981, 45 years ago, so let's say you're 65, you put $100 when you were 20 years old. What was the level of the S&P 500?
I give up.
Like 130.
Wow.
It's 68.55 right now. It's like a 5,000% return or more. So to your point, if you just thrown in $100 and not touched it for 45 years, you'd be now in the S&P with the cost basis at 130, and it's 68.55 today. So I'm with you. I think, but what I am excited about is the transfer of wealth. I think this is going to be one of the biggest generational transfers
the biggest ever, not even close.
Wealth.
Yeah.
And so to see maybe how the young kids inherit that wealth, what they do with it, if they sell the home, if they keep it, there could be really interesting opportunities.
I hear you on that. And Brian, you can take this. It's something I think is interesting, or you can go in your own direction with it. But the boomers have paid into Social Security. They've paid into Medicare, right? So part of me says, I hear you on the spending. I don't like excessive extra spending, but they've also put in their time and paid in the system. So if all of a sudden we start honing in on some of this and say, well, we shouldn't be giving it to them, is that fair?
You have read my mind in turn today. My listening age on Spotify is 70, so I consider myself an honorary boomer. And I do think, we come down hard on that generation unfairly in a lot of ways. Now, I do think you can have a good conversation about Social Security and Medicare and just the math of that. That's a good conversation. But that the headline that we read, it said we're pouring all this money into older folks, and by implication, we're not doing it to younger folks. And I'm thinking to myself, well, did the boomers get tons of money poured into their pockets when they were young?
No.
Or did they accumulate this? And maybe you could argue with me if you want, but the boomers I know who are not living lavishly, like they had nothing.
Yes.
When they bought, they had nothing.
Yes.
But they lived a fairly thrifty life, and they've gotten the advantage of a housing market that went like this and a stock market.
Yes.
But I think a lot of them did the right things, and they're now sitting on more money than they ever thought they would have, and I do think they're going to be generous. But I'm nervous about blaming them because I think it gives an excuse for the younger generation to say, give me my transfer payments, okay? And I think that's the worst thing you can do to young people is get them on the dole because they think older generations are taking all the money that's available in the dole, and that's not how the boomers got here.
The GI Bill was effective, but again, you had to earn it. You had to be a GI to get the
put
GI
your
Bill.
life on the line.
I did want to say real quick, when you mentioned like when they inherit these houses and where they sell them. So across the street from me were two old houses, like really old. The woman who lived in one used to say this whole neighborhood was a farm, and it was, and so,
oh, geez. Back in the day.
and so one house, the person passed away, they broke and built this modern, beautiful house. The other one, the person passed away like 3 years ago. The old house is still there, but they did buy a Tesla Cybertruck. I took a picture one time of my truck and posted it online. Someone says, what's that Section 8 house across the street from you?
Wow.
So who knows? Some will sell, and some will like the nostalgia of living in an old, small house, as long as they got a modern day truck.
That's right.